welcome back to another episode of the Carter Cast. I'm your host, Carter Vaughn. On today's show, we have two-time NBA champ and current head coach of the Utah Valley Wolverines. It's Coach Mark Madsen on the show today. And typically, we do our Tuesday, Friday schedule. I was just going to throw this interview onto Friday's show, but the interview was so good, it deserved to be on its own. So that's why we're putting it up Thursday instead. You're probably listening now on Thursday, and our typical Friday show will be up Friday as well. So a little bonus interview for y'all. And on today's show, we start off talking to Mark Madsen about why he got into coaching, what led him to Utah Valley, and we talk about his team's upcoming season. They have a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule at Wake Forest, at the Joel Coliseum, at Utah State, at Boise State, at Oregon, and at the Marriott Center in BYU, among some other tough games. And then we talk about his playing career in the NBA. He shares some awesome stories about guys like Kobe, Shaq, Phil Jackson, Kevin Garnett. Just an awesome interview. And don't forget, he mentions it at the end, and we'll have it in the episode description as well. Check out the Utah Valley Coaches Clinic on October 8th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. You can sign up in the link below in the episode description. Check it out. If you're an AAU, high school, or even college coach, you're more than welcome to sign up. It's $35. Lunch is provided. Awesome stuff they're doing over there. So make sure to check that out. And I hope you guys enjoy the interview. All right, we now welcome on the head coach of Utah Valley basketball team. It's Coach Mark Madsen. Coach, how are you?
Doing great. Appreciate having you. Really appreciate the invitation to come on the show, guys. And you guys do a great job, and looking forward to talking some hoops.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm going to start it off here, Coach. Was there a specific moment in your career when you realized you wanted to be a head coach? Coaching at Utah Valley now, was it during your NBA career, college career? Or did you always wonder that? Just wondering if there's a moment.
Yeah, no, so I played for some great coaches in my life, starting with my high school coach, John Rayner. So you had John Rayner, you had Coach Moore, who coached me as a freshman. You had Jim Behrens, an assistant in my high school. So I was really impacted in a positive way by these great men and coaches. Mike Montgomery, just a complete class act, great X's and O's. And so it was actually while I was at Stanford, I was reading a book by John Wooden entitled "They Call Me Coach." And I was just reading the book, and while I was reading the book, I said to myself, I want to be a basketball coach. And I remember to this day being on the plane and having that thought. And, and so when my playing career was kind of coming to an end, I dove in to try to find some coaching jobs.
Yeah.
So what led you to Utah Valley?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, my wife is from Orem, Utah. Obviously, I was born and raised in California, Danville, right outside of Oakland, pretty close to San Francisco. My wife is from Orem, Utah. My parents actually moved up. My dad was originally from Salt Lake City. My parents moved back up to Utah kind of in the early 2000s. And so there were some local connections here. The job opened up. Mark Pope had taken the head coaching job at BYU. And so this job opened up, and they called me when I was coaching for the Lakers, and they said, would you like to interview for the job? We're kind of putting together our pool of candidates. Are you interested in an interview? And so I said, I'm not sure. Let me give me a couple hours, because I love the NBA. I played in the NBA, I coached in the NBA. So my wife and I sat down to talk, and the bottom line was and I'd interviewed for some head coaching jobs in the past, but to interview for a head coaching job at a university where basketball is such a big part of this campus, such a big part of this community, it was an absolute no-brainer. And so my wife and I talked for 5 or 10 minutes, and we said, we absolutely want to interview for the job.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Awesome. So let's talk about the team real quick. Most people hear the name Utah Valley. Last year, previous years, they think Fardaws Imac, the Big Maple, first thing they kind of think of, really. And he's gone this year, and sorry, awful to hear about his injury recently, but that's not the point here. Point is, you guys have some dudes on this roster coming into this year. You guys are relatively healthy. What's the feeling going into this season?
Well, I think the feeling going in is a feeling of excitement, a feeling of anticipation. We probably have the toughest schedule this coming year. That we probably have the most difficult schedule that is one of the best that's ever put together here at Utah Valley. We open at Utah State. Utah State is a tremendous basketball team, extremely well coached, great players. We play at BYU. We play at Oregon. We play at Wake Forest. We play at Boise State. The list goes on.
Right.
Long Beach State is coming up here to play. Long Beach State, you talk about toughness, intensity, execution. That's Long Beach State. The players, the caliber of player that they have in the program, the caliber of coach. When you think about, Coach Madsen down there and everything he does, not only in basketball, but in the community, and what he has meant to basketball, starting with helping to build that Gonzaga program up. So we have a challenging schedule. Sometimes the fans up here and even our staff members say, how do we end up with such a tough schedule? But you want that, you want that, Carter, because it makes you iron sharpens iron.
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect transition, because my next question was going to be about your tough non-conference schedule, like you said, at Wake, Oregon, BYU. How does that help you prepare for your current conference schedule? Playing those non-conference games, getting that experience under your belt. Have you seen these tougher games, kind of help you when it comes conference tournament season?
No question. Our first year here, we made the decision, and it was a conscious decision, to play at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. We went in there, and obviously Kentucky is an unbelievable team. It was a 1-possession game, under 3 minutes left to play.
Right.
And so obviously they won the game, they deserved it. But then in conference, to be in close situations, the buzzer beater that we had at home against UTRGV, going down to New Mexico State, basically having the game wrapped up. They had to bank in a off-balance 3-point shot to win the game. And I still remember to this day seeing the ball sail through the air.
Oh, man.
And it was just, I thought, that ball is off. But of course it was in, and Jabari Rice made a great shot. To this day, I still want to ask, hey, did you call glass on that?
Yeah, we sure that counts. Come on now.
Right.
Let's transition to your NBA career a little bit. What was your welcome to the league moment? Everybody talked about their one time where they got stuffed by, a player, or they got crossed up by someone. What was your welcome to the league moment? We were like, oh crap, I'm in the NBA now. I gotta shape it up.
Oh yeah, I think. Well, every NBA player has a lot of those, because you're going against the best in the world every night. My moment was actually guarding Shaq in practice, and after guarding him for one day, my back was completely out of joint. Gary Vitti, the head Lakers trainer, and he said, I could barely walk. I could not move. And Gary Vitti said, hey, don't feel bad. I've seen Shaquille do this to dozens and dozens of players. I mean, I could not walk for about 2 weeks. That's how bad it was. And one of those games that I was healthy for at Portland, and somehow Gary was able to get my back loose enough to warm up. And then Phil put me in the game. I'm out there guarding Rasheed Wallace with a back that can barely move. Luckily, all the action went away from me, and I didn't have to do anything. I just was for 30 seconds, but it was intense.
So drafted to the Lakers, coming off a championship, you ended up winning the next 2 of that three-peat with them. I want to know a little bit about that pressure, getting drafted to a team that's coming off a championship. Was there like a higher intensity in practice, pushing those guys, trying to get back to that level, coming into such a winning program right away?
Yeah, there was intensity in that gym every single day. It was the old practice facility, what they call it. Was it the Toyota Center at the time? I can't remember, but I think it was. But I mean, you talked about high stakes, accountability. One of the great things about Kobe is that he held every single player accountable. He held every player accountable to the highest standards, to the highest level of play, to the highest abilities that they had within them, their personal self. And I'm grateful for that. Sometimes it was unlike any other teammate I've ever had in terms of the intensity, the frequency, and really the tough love. But it helps you become the best version of yourself.
Right.
You mentioned Kobe. Is there a specific moment you have in mind when you think back to all your times with him? Like, is there one specific Kobe story you think of most of the time?
I think of so many. I think of so many Kobe stories. Phil Jackson, he would fine players for being late. If you show up, very, very few players in the NBA are late, but if you show up 3 minutes late, you'd get to the team and Phil would just scream out, fine this guy $100, fine him $100. And one time Derek Fisher and I were on the injured list and we were late for the national anthem.
Ooh.
Phil, he just looks down, find these guys $100. You know, he said it to his assistant, and his assistant had the ledger. And so very few people were late. Well, one day, the one time Kobe was late, where everyone's on the bus. The bus is supposed to leave at 10 a.m. to a shoot around. I can't remember which city we're in. But everyone can see Kobe walking through the hotel lobby because there was a glass window. And the clock, everyone's cell phone starts reading 10 a.m. The minute it clicked 10, Phil Jackson starts yelling at the bus driver, "Go, get out of here. Leave him.
No way.
Yeah, because Phil held everybody accountable. Whether it was me or Kobe or Shaq, Phil would leave you. And so the bus driver, I was sitting front left in the bus. The bus driver, you could tell, was nervous. He didn't know what to do because he could see Kobe too. The bus driver starts leaving slowly. And you think Kobe sprinted to the bus? No, he didn't sprint. Every other human being would sprint to the bus and start banging on the door.
Yeah.
Kobe just kept walking at his same cadence, his same pace. The bus driver got cold feet. The bus driver stopped 20 yards later. Phil's yelling at the bus driver. The bus driver stopped for Kobe. Kobe walks on. Phil's yelling at Kobe. Kobe just walked on, just calm as can be. And that just shows you who Kobe is. That just shows you who Kobe. Nothing rattled that guy. Nothing rattled.
Imagine being that bus driver there. You got Phil Jackson yelling in your ear one thing, and then you see Kobe Bryant walking towards you, and like you're the one that ultimately has to make the decision.
No question. No question.
Oh.
He was special, and that's a relationship I value so much.
So you mentioned Phil Jackson, and this is my next question as well. Being a head coach yourself now, have you taken anything away from what you learned from Phil Jackson during those years in LA? Or maybe talk a little bit about his coaching style, managing that locker room with Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Derek Fisher, all these people.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, the lessons that Phil wasn't even trying to teach lessons. He was just being the best version of himself and being the great coach that he is. And Phil would just hold every single person accountable. He didn't care if it was Shaq or Kobe. I mean, he and Shaq would get into it. He and Kobe would get into it, and I do take that because it's important that the best players are held accountable.
So I heard a story that your first year you're driving a old beat up minivan, a Toyota minivan or whatever, and Shaq goes, "Whose minivan is this?" And he went out. He took you to a car dealership and then got you some new suits or whatever. Is this story true or false?
No, that story's true. That story's true. We were in the locker room one day, and by the way, that car was a Toyota Previa, probably a 91 Toyota.
Probably lasted for years.
Oh yeah, it was a great car. It had a few 100,000 miles on it. So I'm one of 10 kids, and I had some older sisters, and they'd had the car. Maybe an older brother drove the car. There were dents on the car, but NBA players don't get paid until November 15th. Well, it's early October for training camp, and so I have no money, because I had an endorsement deal for $10,000, but I didn't have the money to go out and buy a $50,000 car,
right?
And I wasn't gonna just, I wasn't going to try to overextend myself with that. And so I was happy to drive a dented car. I didn't care. When the locker room, Shaq said, "Hey, whose car in the parking lot is that Astro fan?" I raised my hand. I said, "It's mine. I love it." He said, "No, you cannot drive that into the Staples Center." And so the day he signed a $40 million contract extension, back then it was, whether it was 40 or 80, that was over 5 or 6 years. Now guys make 50 million in a year. But Shaq took me out shopping, offered to put a down payment down on a brand new car, spent $7,000 on all kinds of clothes. I mean, he took me to Beverly Hills clothes shopping. He was buying stuff I never. Yeah, it was cool. Then he bought everyone on the team a brand new Rolex, and he brought it in the next day, and he said, "Here's a Rolex." Gave a single Rolex to everybody. Said, "I couldn't have gotten my extension without you guys." That's Shaq. Generous, awesome. People centered, loves his teammates. That's Shaq.
So transitioning a little bit, those Lakers stories are awesome, but I want to ask a little bit about your time in Minnesota, because in your career you spent more time there, playing with Kevin Garnett in a different scenario than the Lakers. Obviously, how was your time in Minnesota compared to your time in LA? Because obviously you won 2 championships with the Lakers, but I just want to hear a little bit about your time in Minnesota as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I got to Minnesota, and I got there in August, drove all my stuff out there. I was single at the time, drove cross country. I got there, and some of the coaches just said, "Hey, this is a tough city, Minneapolis. The media can be brutal." They were really prepping me. I mean, they must have forgotten I was coming from LA.
Yeah, exactly. You just came.
I mean, for me, the great thing about Minnesota is you had a great owner, Glenn Taylor. Bill Pop of Pop Telecommunications was in the ownership group. I mean, this was the ultimate family environment. I mean, Glenn would have us to the house, cook us, for at different points, cook food. I mean, it was the ultimate family environment. And Kevin Garnett was the ultimate leader. I was sitting on a flight one night with Fred Hoiberg, and Fred and I were talking, and Fred literally told me, he said, "I think Kevin Garnett is not only the best leader in the NBA, he is the best leader in all of sports." And we said that because he's a great communicator. He held everybody accountable, and he did it in a way that everybody respected.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention this. I, as an LDS person myself, being in the church, being in the NBA, did you find it tough while your time in the league, staying a member of the church? I know it can be tough. It's the NBA, it's NBA. You know what goes on in the NBA. We all do. Did you find it tough at times, or was it just, this is my thing? Was it hard to uphold those standards?
No, I did not. I didn't find it tough to stay a member of the church in the NBA. I did not find it tough. People sometimes because the NBA is a high profile sport, people talk about, the craziness of the NBA, but there's craziness in law firms. There's craziness in accounting firms. I remember we were at an event in Minneapolis, and somebody got up. It was a political event, and for some reason I was there, but our owner was there. And so the local politician got up and said, I'm tired of seeing scandals of NBA players, and NFL players. And our owner got right up and he said, "I'm tired of seeing scandals in politics. I'm tired of seeing scandals with politicians."
Yeah,
I loved hearing that. I loved hearing that. The NBA is not perfect, but the NBA is a great place with tremendous people.
Right.
A lot of family-centered players, and just a lot of great people that are constantly working at charitable events, constantly working with youth. Horace Grant would be at the homeless shelters, giving out the turkeys, and giving out the stuffing. Shaq's track record in terms of giving back to communities is unmatched. It's unmatched. And so, and in the NBA, there's a lot of people of tremendous faith. It's a diverse place. There are people of tremendous religious faith regarding the Islam faith, regarding whether it's Christianity, Jehovah's Witness, anything. And the one thing I found in the NBA, I found it to be a very tolerant and accepting place of everyone. If you respected your teammates, they respected you back. And I really, really appreciate the great examples that I saw in the NBA in terms of my teammates and my coaches.
Speaking of the NBA, I want to transition a little bit to how the game's played today. I don't know if you watch much NBA nowadays, but is there any different? I know there's differences, but what's the main difference you see in today's game versus how it was when you played? Obviously, more 3-pointers, more volume. The Steph Currys of the world. Everybody's growing up shooting 40-footers. What do you think about that?
Well, if I was playing in college today, I don't think I'd be drafted in the NBA because I wasn't a 3-point shooter.
Right.
I might have had a short stint, but I wouldn't have played 9-10 years like I played. Had the opportunity to play the 10th, but obviously I ended up negotiating a buyout because they had overcommitted on a couple guys. But they were committed to keeping me, actually, and I've said that publicly before. But the game is much more up tempo, more space. And I love the way the game is played because there's always a place for energy. There's always a place for heart, and there's always a place for hustle.
I like it.
I have two last questions real quick on this one. You talked about your head coaching time, or you're an assistant with the Utah Flash. I read your website blogs or whatever, and you talked about when they were going to bring Jordan in to do the one-on-one thing for the Utah Flash. If you don't know the story, they were going to have Jordan come in, recreate the Byron Russell shot or whatever. Was that a tough spot for you?
Let me talk about that. So first of all, I think every single person involved was doing their best. You know, I think that there was a hype that probably I think the media took it and ran with it. And you know, I think in fairness, I think you know, the representatives for Michael Jordan were absolutely contacted, and this was under consideration based on everything I heard. And so, yeah, I mean, it ended up, you know, he ended up not being able to come, and they got a double, and you know, I was an assistant coach at the time, and I was aware of the situation. But I think that everyone involved was trying to make something very positive happen, with the ultimate goal being a large charitable contribution.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, and you described that perfectly in the blog you wrote on your website too. It's, you know, it was just I mean, it seemed just like an honest misunderstanding, and look, lessons learned.
Absolutely. 100%.
Connor, do you have anything else?
You said you had one more. I'll let you go.
Okay, so coach, in your time at UVU, I've attended, I believe, 4. I think I've only been able to go to 4 games at UVU.
Yeah.
I'm 4-0 when I have attended Utah Valley basketball games.
Okay.
So what I have an offer for you. I'm offering my services to attend as many Utah Valley basketball games as I can. I'm moving down to Orem, Provo area in January. I'm available for a very small price.
I'll tell you what, Carter, you got yourself a deal. Season tickets. Anytime you need tickets, hit me up. Done.
There we go. I would have taken like a Little Caesars pizza. I drive a very, very not a hard bargain at all. Awesome, coach. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you so much for coming on. Go buy UVU tickets. Check out Utah Valley stuff. They're going to be awesome this year. They're playing a ton of tough games. And coach, thank you again, man.
Hey, Carter, really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Connor, thank you for the time as well. I'll just give a little plug on, you know, we do have an unbelievable coaches clinic coming up on Saturday, October. Excuse me, let me just make sure I have the date correct. Saturday, October 8th, and it's going to be unbelievable. And so that'll be at 9 a.m. here at UVU. So if any of the listeners and the viewership has interest in that, come on out and take a look. All the details are on gouvu.com. So
do they need to apply or anything?
Yeah, there's a little link. They
okay.
It's like $30, but yeah, should be a lot of
awesome.
fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much, coach.
Coach, thanks again for coming on.
Appreciate you guys. See ya.